Chapter 1 Straits of Florida 1. Whether you take the initiative or turn your back and wait, people can always reach the other side of their desires. Just like the seemingly changeable wind direction affected by the island, it is actually dominated by the northeast trade wind all year round. The humid air has a slight salty smell, and the temperature in the early 20s should make people very comfortable. But no matter how beautiful the scenery is, it becomes meaningless over time. Chun Shoshu, who has been in this world for more than 2 months, no longer thinks about the 60-foot sailboat and the 2 Eastern European beauties he left behind on Paradise Island. Surviving in this dangerous era is his only belief. Fortunately, his previous sailing experience and good physical fitness allowed him to quickly adapt to the basic skills of a 17th-century sailor. The oval-shaped mast currently standing at a height of more than 20 meters gave him the best view on the whole ship. As the ship's hull rose and fell, the mast swayed rhythmically, and he looked around, seeing nothing but the sea. As of this morning, there are still no ships. "Hi, Eastern boy." A white boy climbed onto the mast. "How are you doing?" Chun Shoshu shook his head. "There is no boat, Fraser. Is it time?" "Hi, you always look expressionless. Get down quickly, and I will teach you how to sail when I get down." Chun Shoshu stood up and patted Fraser on the shoulder. "Thank you. I'll leave this to you. I'll treat you to a drink later." The Blue Banshee was sailing south along the Florida peninsula, and the flag flying southwest on the flagpole of the main topmast indicated that the wind was now northeasterly. The Blue Banshee's main and mizzen jibs were full of wind on the starboard side, and she was sailing southwest. The ship's hull was naturally tilting to port. Chun Shoshu grabbed the thick side stay of the forebottom mast and climbed onto the deck from the port side. His movements were not fancy. Unlike Fraser Gale, who was a descendant of fishermen from the coast of Norfolk, England, he was a sailor at heart, and juggling on the mast was simply an innate skill. After landing on the deck, the bosun came over and handed Chun Shoshu a glass of beer. "Thank you, Mr. Weeks." Sailing from the Chesapeake Bay to the Strait of Florida, the only gain was to pick up Chun Shoshu, a Chinese man who fell into the water not far from the mouth of the bay. Nearly 100 young and middle-aged men were crammed into the small ketch. They had gained nothing for so long, and anxiety was surging on the ship. So today the captain announced that each person could get 3 glasses of beer, and the sailors on the mast would get an extra glass, which caused thunderous cheers from the sailors. Bosun Wicks is about the same age as Chun Shoshu's father, and is called Dad Wicks by the sailors. I heard that he has been with Captain Grover for 20 years, when they were still serving in the British Royal Navy. "I'm afraid you don't have time to rest. The captain is waiting for you." After huddled on the narrow mast all morning, Chun Shoshu was sipping beer while moving his arms and knees when he heard the order from the bosun. "Yes, Mr. Weeks." He drank the remaining beer in 2 gulps, put down his cup, and jogged into the poop. The Blue Banshee is considered large among the sloop sailboats, but the poop cannot be compared with that of a Galen ship, so half of the poop is actually below the main deck. Chun Shoshu walked down a few steps and said, "Report." Perhaps because the captain once served in the Royal Navy of England, many of the formal rules on the ship inevitably bear traces of the military. "Come in." Chun Shoshu pushed the door open and went in. The poop was the captain's bedroom and also the meeting room on the ship. At this time, all the officers on the ship were on board, including Captain Grover, First Mate Wilkinson, Second Mate Sterling, and Navigator Chatfield. All the officers stood around the captain's navigation table. "Gentlemen, do you understand? At today's speed, we will turn left tomorrow and sail to the Bahamas." "Aye, aye, sir." Heading to the Bahamas? Although he has not been in this world for a long time, Chun Shoshu has already learned from the old sailors that the current Bahamas Islands are not the Paradise Islands that they later became. The unpredictable wind directions of the islands, the unexplored rocks hidden under the sea surface, and the complex ocean currents can easily tear apart a wooden sailing ship. Even the Spanish who ruled the New World regarded it as a daunting prospect. The first mate and the second mate turned around and left the cabin. Captain Grover looked at the navigation chart without raising his head. I need you to reconfirm our latitude with Philip. Yes, sir. Chun Shoshu picked up the right angle meter lying next to him and followed Navigator Chatfield towards the bow of the ship. 这个时代，即便是英格兰王室海军，掌握了导航计算和辨认海图的军官也并不多，纬度计算是其中比较简单的一项。In the evening, even fewer people know how to measure magnetic declination using azimuth angle and celestial body appearance and departure angle. Originally, only the captain and navigator had these navigation skills on this ship. First Mate Wilkinson was a good lieutenant, and Sterling was the nephew of a friend of the captain's fallen officer, but neither of them knew how to do it. 比起枯燥的寒暑计算，威尔金森大夫宁可把自己泡在酒桶里，而斯特林先生则是还没学会，常常带着他是焦土地的。These gossips are what sailors often mention in secret chats. There were no quadrants and sextants at this time. They endured the dazzling sunlight and used a right angle meter to observe the angle of the sun. Chun Shoshu and Chatfield calculated the angle 3 times respectively. The difference was very small. After taking the average, Chatfield went to report to the captain. When he was rescued on board the ship, Chun Shoshu didn't understand why the white people on the ship in the 17th century treated him well. Slowly, he learned that this was a privateer ship. Well, it was another name for a pirate ship. Not only did they have no intention of selling him into slavery, but instead let him keep his personal parcels. There was a Seiko EcoDrive dive watch and a large waterproof world map. Of course, there are no idlers on a seagoing ship. He was not sick. He scrubbed the deck, climbed the mast to raise and reef the sails, inspected the rigging, and cleaned the gun barrels. He had to do all the sailors' work. Navigation skills are also a learning process for Chun Shoshu, which originated from a discussion about the route between Captain Grover and him. All this cast a layer of mystery on Chun Shoshu. Seeing that Chat, called Captain Chat by sailors, was gone, he asked, Mr. Dongfang. Several 11- and 2-year-old children gathered around and said, "What are we going to learn today?" Only when he was with these children did he feel a real sense of relief. Don't be surprised that there are children on board. In England, it is very common to become a sailor at the age of 12, and the legendary Sir Drake was already a captain at the age of 17. This is the greatest age of exploration in human history. Everyone is eager for wealth. Everyone is absorbing everything that is useful to them, and the rapid pace of life is changing the world. The story of a penniless poor boy who made a fortune in East India or the New World inspires everyone. Maybe you are still a shabby sailor today, but you can be a captain or even a colonial governor tomorrow. Parker, today we continue to study plane geometry, Chun Shoshu said with a smile. He obtained the teaching materials from Sterling in exchange for half a month's supply of beer. The sense of mystery did not help him stay in this world for a long time. From his father, he learned that only exchange should be an eternal theme. At the stern of the ship, Captain Grover and the navigator walked side by side onto the poop deck, casually returning a military salute to the helmsman, and the captain raised his monocular to observe the route ahead. Chat stood half behind the captain and said in a voice that only 2 people could hear, "Captain, can our Mr. Oriental really bring a new shipping route to the East Indies?" Grover held on to the tiller and took off the pipe from his mouth. "Only God can guide the new course, Mr. Charter. When there is no Royal Navy at this time, Royal Navy." Chapter 2, Florida Straits 2. The sky gradually turns dark, the setting sun reflects on the sea, and the fine waves jump around the blue Banshee, refracting the sparkling light in all directions. On the deck of the blue Banshee, some off-duty sailors were practicing small arms training under the supervision of the bosun. Unlike the Army, which has standard weapons, sailors basically use whatever they have, so the small arms on the ship are also varied. In addition to the essential matchlocks and rare flintlock pistols, there are also various cold weapons. The most common type is the sailor's scimitar, followed by daggers and boarding axes, and even bows, arrows, rapiers, and short spears. The bows and arrows belong to an Indian boss named Opeson Cano and 4 of his men. Chun Shoshu once saw him nail a rat that was running on the deck to the bow of the ship with one arrow. No one on the ship dared to mess with them. Chun Shoshu chose the most common sailor's knife, and the bosun himself became his master. This cost him another half-month's beer ration, and now unless the captain had extra meals or someone else was treating him, he had no time to drink. The knife in Chun Shoshu's hand was blocked again, and he staggered back. The bosun's left hand took out a dagger and clamped it around Chun Shoshu's neck. Chun Shoshu felt a chill in his heart. As long as his father's dagger was moved forward just a little bit, he could imagine the carotid artery being cut open and the bright red blood spurting out under the pressure of the heart. The bosun put away his dagger. "I've told you many times, pay attention to your steps. The ship is not land. Maintaining balance and finding a place to stand between the rigging and the mast will become your instinct." The bosun's movements were too fast, and Chun Shoshu looked frustrated. "Yes, Mr. Weeks." "Fraser," Dad yelled, "come here. Keep practicing with him." Fraser ran over. "Hey, Eastern boy, let's do it. Haha." Chun Shoshu responded without hesitation. "Come on, if you lose, all my beer will be yours today." Fraser was a good sailor, but not a good fighter. It's not that Chun Shoshu doesn't have a chance. The bosun saw that the two men were already fighting together and walked towards the bow. In addition to the poop, the bow deck is also a relatively high place on the ship. Wicks, in fact, he has made rapid progress. He is 6 feet tall and has good flexibility. He is in really enviable physical condition. A blond man leaning against the ship's side guard called out to the bosun with interest. There are indeed some people on this ship who do not need to participate in the work of ordinary sailors. The Indian chiefs and the Germans in front of them all belong to this category. They all have their own teams. If the Corsair is regarded as a joint stock company, it is indeed very similar. And the captain is the theoretical largest shareholder and the actual CEO, then the chief and von der Meyden are equivalent to small shareholders. Weeks frowned. In fact, he instinctively disliked these outsiders. More than once, he reported to the captain that the people on the ship were too mixed this time. The captain didn't explain much to Weeks. He just said that they were specially invited for this trip and asked the bosun to pay attention to the management of ordinary sailors and avoid internal conflicts. Weeks looked at the exquisite sword guard on Maiden's waist and the somewhat old coat on his body. Indeed, Chen's physical condition is very good. It has only been 2 months, and I will not be able to teach him soon. Maybe you can try it then. "Humph," Maiden said with a smile. "That's what I mean. If you think it's okay, I'll train him starting from tomorrow." Weeks didn't expect that the German actually had such a plan, but he didn't care. "As long as Chen agrees, it's up to you." After saying that, he continued to walk to the bow. "Thank you, bosun." After getting a satisfactory answer, Maiden walked down to the deck. This cruise is just getting more and more interesting. On the Blue Banshee, the best cabin in the poop belongs to the captain. The sailors were crowded in the most bumpy front half of the ship. 2 or 3 people shared a hammock or a berth. In fact, there were no berths there, so everyone just lay down wherever they could. The officers and small shareholders have their own cabins in the stern cabin. Although they are also in a collective cabin, the conditions are much better than those of the sailors. Maiden walked to his cabin. Everyone else was sleeping, except for an older-looking man who was writing something in the dim light. "Herr Westerheim, are you still sorting out those battle records?" "Yes, Ernst. These records are valuable experiences, wealth acquired through countless sacrifices and blood." Maiden picked up the brandy bottle in the cabinet, took a sip, and said softly, "What is this for? Who can you show it to after you write it all down?" The man known as Westerheim raised his head and looked at him with firm eyes. "This is for ourselves. History must not be forgotten." Maiden curled his lips, took off his sword, and threw it on the bed. "Damn it! We only have 1 bottle of brandy left. After finishing it, do we have to drink the beer on the ship that looks like horse piss?" Westerheim looked at him with a sarcastic look. "You can grab a Spanish ship. Maybe there's a whole shipload of brandy there." Listen, Westerheim, I know you are not satisfied with this business, but we need money. No matter what we plan to do, money is indispensable. Maiden seemed to be angry. You don't have to go when you join the gang. Just stay in the cabin. I will kill all the Westbanks on the ship by myself. Stop talking. The two of them spoke so loudly that everyone else in the cabin woke up, and someone tried to persuade them. Ernst, at noon you said you were going to take that Oriental boy as your apprentice. How is it going now? Asked a man lying on the upper bunk. The bosun has agreed, Walter. Maiden sat on the bunk. I'll go find him directly later. Naturally, Chinshoshu couldn't hear the conversation below deck. He was still practicing sailor swords with Fraser, and both of them were novices in swordsmanship. Fraser is good at jumping around on the deck, but Chinshoshu is better at height and length of arms. At this time, the sky was getting dark. Seeing that the two men's exercises were not exciting but intense, the other sailors stopped what they were doing and gradually gathered around to watch. Fraser was a little anxious. Everyone knew that Chinshoshu was a newcomer, but he still couldn't get it. He would inevitably be laughed at by the people around him when he returned. In my impatience, my hands became more and more confused. When Chinshoshu saw more and more people watching, his heart moved and his eyes became clearer and clearer. He abandoned his previous cautious approach and began to stride forward, forcing Fraser to retreat step by step. Fraser, you are so stupid. You are still pretending to be a pirate. Go back to your bed in Norfolk. The booing around him became louder and louder, and some people even started to place bets on the outcome. Fraser was anxious and angry, but Chinshoshu didn't want to wait any longer. Before their bets were too big, they staggered forward with T-steps, but seemed to have accidentally stepped on the mizzen boom halyard with his supporting leg, causing him to stumble and slide down. Fraser's wooden knife slashed down smoothly, and Chinshoshu held the knife in place and said in frustration, "Unfortunately, I stepped on the rope. I give up." Brutabun. Fraser gasped, "Don't forget your bet." Chinshoshu dropped the knife. Yes, including the one as a reward for climbing the mast. I have a total of 4 beers today. I drank one myself, and I have to return one to Father Weeks. The rest belongs to you. Haha, these are good brothers. Fraser also dropped the knife and helped Chinshoshu up. Holy shit, this is nothing. The fight is over now, and my bet hasn't been placed yet. No, I'll try it again. I'm not satisfied yet. More and more people were booing, and Fraser squinted his eyes and turned around. Are you looking for death? If anyone makes any more noise, I will hang you on the top mast to catch the wind. This guy didn't seem to be pretending to be successful, and the booing became louder and louder. Dang. The bosun kept looking at the hourglass. Seeing that the time was up, he rang the ship's bell. Everyone had a look on their faces, and they immediately lined up, and the Germans came up. After a while, the captain came on deck, holding a hymn book in his hand. Under the leadership of the captain, everyone on the ship began their daily prayers in their native languages. Chinshoshu was no exception. He simply followed the captain's lead and read it. The prayers soon ended, and it was time for dinner. Supper was some biscuits and corned beef, which amounted to about £1 for each person, and some vinegar. Of course, beer is also a must. These corned beef were very salty and unpalatable, but I heard from the old sailors on the ship that this is much better than those ocean-going merchant ships. Because the Blue Banshee does not sail across the ocean, it can often dock to replenish fresh water and food, so it is not like sailors on those ocean-going merchant ships who have to eat beef pickled for 5 or 6 years and drink green, smelly water. After finishing the assigned food in 3 or 2 mouthfuls, it was the most pleasant time of the day. The space on the ship is small, and flammable and explosive materials such as gunpowder and matchlock are stored under the cabin, so smoking is strictly prohibited below the deck. But there is no limit on the deck. There is a small box at the stern near the poop. There is a small needle in it and a 4 or 5-inch match rope next to it for everyone to light cigarettes. Tobacco was still a very expensive thing in Europe at this time, a luxury product that only the rich could consume. But in the New World, especially Jamestown on the Blue Banshee, almost everyone grows tobacco, known as the Tobacco Coast. So sailors had ample reserves of tobacco. Chinshoshu also got some from Fraser. Men, no matter what race they are, exchanging cigarettes and taking a few puffs together can easily bring them closer together. 1. Of course, there was no modern Germany at this time. Germany was a cultural concept. 2. Spain is the name given to them by European countries except Spain and Portugal. Chapter 3, Florida Straits 3. Chinshoshu was leaning against the bulwark and recalling what he had learned today. The sailors next to him were all chatting. Everyone stood up when they saw von der Meden, whom the sailors thought was a German nobleman, approaching. It's not because of Maiden's possible noble status. This is no longer the Middle Ages, and there are many examples of civilians counterattacking the nobles. In Jamestown, which is very familiar to sailors, among the 295 people brought by the first 3 colonial ships, 92 were English gentlemen with servants, wearing silk garters brought from Europe, hats with gold rims, and belts embroidered with heraldry to hang out all day long. In addition, they know nothing else. They don't know how to fish, hunt, farm, or fight. Less than 5 years later, the grass on the graves of these English gentlemen was already 3 feet high. In Jamestown, there is still a story about young George Percy, the son of the Earl of Northumberland. Because of hunger, the young lord used the starch on the elegant, ornate and complicated hard collar from the Elizabethan era to cook porridge. Naturally, the New World, with its broken rights and broken music, would not have any respect for the seemingly ruined foreign nobles. It's because of other things. Everyone is saying that these Germans were introduced by the captain's boss, and they're said to be very good at fighting. The German walked up to Chinshoshu, held his chest with his left hand, took off his hat with his right hand, leaned forward slightly, nodded, and said, "Hello, I am Ernst von der Meden from Silesia. Seeing your weapon practice this afternoon, I think you are very talented. If you are willing, you can learn swordsmanship from me, and we will start tomorrow." Maiden said confidently, "The space on the ship is very small, and everyone is working hard to make ends meet. In fact, everyone basically knows whether a certain person can beat the sailors." Many of the sailors around had envious looks. In Europe at this time, swordsmanship was also divided into schools and was monopolized by major families and organizations, with a strong residual medieval style. In order to keep it secret, each sect even messed up the order of the sword manual and the oral instructions. If it is not taught by words and deeds, it is useless to obtain the sword manual. Ordinary people like sailors generally have no access to high-end practical swordsmanship in their lifetime. In a dangerous place like the New World, the value of personal force is even more important than in Europe. Chinshoshu didn't know this background. He subconsciously stood up straight, put his hands in front of him, bowed slightly, and said in his native language, "Chinshoshu is from Wu County, Jiangsu, China." Then Chinshoshu said in a language that everyone could understand, "Mr. Maiden, thank you for your kindness. You are an excellent swordsman, but I already have a teacher on the ship. In my country, it is not a gentleman's behavior to change teachers casually." Chinshoshu carefully considered his words. "So, please forgive me, I cannot learn swordsmanship from you." The sailors smoking around were stunned. "Chin, were you speaking your native language just now? Is that your noble gift?" They all asked curiously, as if they had discovered a new sea route. Being coaxed like this alleviated the embarrassment caused by Chinshoshu's rejection of Maiden. Maiden